So the CCEOP program has been the major vehicle for upgrading country cold chain capacity in recent years. And we are very happy, Gavi and UNICEF together, to make this presentation on the progress made so far. We will be running through an agenda, and maybe next slide, where Gavi will be starting out updating on the CCEOP program design, and we will then, from a UNICEF perspective, first get into some of the progress from a deployment point of view and procurement point of view, followed by an update on some of the programmatic impacts and lessons learned in this regard. And that will then take us into some of the design consideration from Gavi's side when it comes to the next iteration of the program under Gavi 5.0. And we'll also have a special dedicated session on the IMPT and some of the opportunities that the program is raising when it comes to monitoring of product equipment from distance. But maybe, Jalia, over to you for an initial update on the CCEOP program design.
Thank you, Thomas. So the cold chain equipment optimization platform was established in 2016 with three primary objectives. One was around coverage and equity, just to make sure that countries had the equipment that was functional and could protect the vaccines that they had within the cold chains. Secondly, was to make sure that countries, as new products came on board, countries would quickly introduce these new products like solar direct drive and products that were more efficient to suit their context. And third was really around market shaping, and that was making sure that as new products come on board, countries would have access to these products. Products would come at a cheaper price, but most importantly, to incentivize manufacturers to be able to put new products out on the market on the basis of which countries can further access those products. Now, with the introduction of the CCEOP platform, countries have benefited in a number of ways in order to make sure that one is they have access to optimal equipment. Now, the equipment from the CCEOP platform is grade A, freeze protected. It operates across a range of extended temperature, ambient temperature ranges. It comes bundled with voltage stabilizers just to make sure that in instances where there's unreliable power, equipment is protected, but it also comes with temperature monitors to make sure that vaccines, the temperature of vaccines within the equipment is monitored. Now, a key component of the CCEOP platform is service bundle, and this is making sure that suppliers are accountable for the distribution, installation, and training of users on how to use this equipment, but also in instances, depending on the country, where Ministry of Health and UNICEF do support customs clearance. And a key component of this is making sure that as soon as the equipment is procured, it can quickly be deployed within countries. Now, in 2020, we added a country ownership requirement to CCEOP to ensure that as countries buy equipment that can generate temperature performance data, they can use this data to inform maintenance decision. Now, another key component that was introduced with CCEOP was the country-led deployment, where countries do now have the opportunity, especially in 6 countries where pilots are being conducted, to do a country-led deployment approach. And with this, we are hoping that we can increase country ownership in terms of how they procure and deploy this equipment. Where there are barriers to entry within a particular country, this approach addresses that. And we have a range of equipment that is eligible into the CCEOP program. That is the Iceland refrigerators, solar direct drives, freeze-free cold boxes, and vaccine carriers, as long as the in addition to the long-term passive devices. Now, a range of tools have been made available for countries that haven't had a chance to interact with these tools, from the total cost of ownership tool to the application guidelines, to the CCEOP guideline, technology guide, which allows you to know which equipment is eligible. In addition to that, we have the UNICEF Supply Division cold chain equipment catalog, a WHO PQS catalog, and a range of other equipment, including other documents, including the CCEOP technical and target requirements. And all this can allow a country to adequately plan for their CCEOP application. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jalia. So as indicated before, the CCEOP program has really been a vehicle for program upgrade of the cold chain equipment, and a number of progress areas can be summarized. Next slide, please. And first of all, when we look into the eligibility of countries that could be applying for the program, there was 56 eligible countries to start out with, and program to date we have 51 countries has applied and been approved, and many of these countries has also entered not only the first phase but also the second and third phase of program implementation. So we gradually start to see many of these countries being up to speed with upgraded cold chain equipment in the country. Some of the things that is also worthwhile emphasizing is that project to date we have almost 50,000 units on PO, of which most of them, 40,000, have been delivered and also installed at health facility level. And as Jalia was emphasizing before, the notion of service bundle was introduced as part of the CCEOP, including as a mean to avoid that procurement is being done and then the equipment is stalling at national level and not distributed further. The CCEOP and the progress that has been made so far has indicated proof of concept when it comes to the service bundle by this indication that goods are relatively quickly being from when they are being put on PO actually distributed and ending up very quickly at the health facility level. Maybe moving to the next slide. One of the things, of course, we need to keep monitoring as well is it's not only that the goods are arriving at the health facility level, but they're also installed as they're supposed to be. And the Alliance here has been introducing what we call the post-installation inspection, the PIIs, which is a methodology that's, based on ISO standards, are taking out a random sampling of all the equipment that is being installed. And project to date, almost 1,000 sites has been inspected with a quite comprehensive checklist here. And the findings in this regard shows that more than 80% of the site has been serviced in what we call acceptable way, which is the highest ranking that we can receive here, which is pretty good, we would say. At the same time, there is a small subsection that we categorize as adequate, where there are some room for improvement, and then an even smaller subset that is categorized as unacceptable, where manufacturers need to go out and make adjustments to the installation as it's coming here. But the PII overall has given us a very good insight to guiding manufacturers specifically, but also identifying some of the interface areas between the manufacturers doing the implementation and the government sort of representing the enabling environment for manufacturers to do the implementation. And this has enabled us from a more global perspective to guide specific countries, specific governments of specific adjustments, but also adjust global guidelines to how adjustments can be made at the more global level. One thing maybe worth emphasizing when it comes to PII is that we have also included proxy indicators for equipment performance as we are sort of pending PMM, post-marketing monitoring data from equipment performance from WHO. And here the proxy indicators has been some of the temperature alarms that has been in highlight. And here we have identified a few cases where there has been a need for PQS adjustments of some of the projects here, which again is an indication that these type of systematic inspections is definitely worthwhile to make adjustments along the way. Next slide, please. So in addition to some of the programmatic requirements under the CCEOP, I mean, basically upgrading the health facilities with up to date performing equipment, we have also have some ambitions of doing market shaping or ensuring that we are operating in a relatively healthy market. And as we started the CCEOP program, there was some indications from the application data that we got from countries that there was a preference towards one or two manufacturers, which was sort of leading towards a duopoly situation, and which was actually a monopoly situation because it was one manufacturer for ILRs and one manufacturer for STD, which was leading towards a less healthy market development. And we have then, as an alliance, been adjusting throughout 2018 and towards 19, and working both together with receiving countries as well as manufacturers, and has, through the different means that we have implemented, established a more healthy market conditions there. And some of those experiences that we have generated here will be some of those that we will be carrying forward into the design of the next project period. Next slide. Maybe the last one when it comes to progress. We have had the program when it was was initiated back in 2016 and 17 had ambitions around having innovation and more new innovative product entering the scene. And one of the measures for that was the number of new pre-qualified manufacturers and pre-qualified products being introduced here. And from that perspective, we can see that the program has been quite successful when it comes to more than 100 unique products has been pre-qualified, and much of them being CCEOP platform eligible. One thing though, when we look at it from a procurement point of view, we can take, at least from a UNICEF supply division point of view, take note that only half of them, or maybe 1/3 of them, are being procured at scale, while a number of them are actually not that much in demand by countryside, which again, when we are going to define the next program and project cycle, could lead to some adjustments into some of the recommendations and adjustments about some of the measures for innovation success, one could say. So let me stop there on the CCEOP progress. I think Karuna will probably catch up on few into the program design in her part of the presentation. But before we get there, just a few words on how the COVID situation has impacted the CCEOP implementation over the last year. So next slide, please. And I will be very brief here. First of all, I was talking about the PIIs before, the post-installation inspection. By nature, these activities are with, external inspectors going to specific sites, which has corresponded less well with public health guidance of social distancing and unneeded interaction between personnel here. So much of these activities has been put on pause during 2020. We can see now that we are gradually in some countries starting to pick up on it, which is positive, but it is that activity that has suffered the most. CCEOP per definition is an end-to-end activity, and we can see that some of the influence has been on the international shipments of goods that has been impacted, but also when it comes to in-country distribution. So the manufacturers, the local service providers, has been sort of influenced by the COVID situation here. But let me also use this opportunity to praise both countries as well as manufacturers of finding workarounds. So the impact of it has been sort of manageable. We have seen slight delays when it comes to ODP development, as well as applications and country approvals. The natural situation that has been seen is that national authorities, rather than doing CCEOP applications and ODPs, has been focusing on the COVID situation and allocated resources there. And the way that Gavi in particular has been adjusting here is to delay some of the or giving the opportunity of postponing some of the application and open windows for that, including also with the independent review committee assessing some of the applications has come in. So overall, some delays here, but also relatively manageable, and I think we have come relatively healthy out on the other side here. So let me stop there on progress and the impact on CCEOP, and Michelle, hand over to PD Program Division UNICEF on some of the impact analysis and lesson learning. Oh.
Thank you, Thomas. So with a program this size or a project this size, it's important to measure the impact that it's having on the program, as well as iterate once we learn the lessons, so that we can make improvements on our processes. Gavi had commissioned a study which was conducted by JSI, and in the application and coordination of CCEOP, they saw that proper preparation for CCEOP deployment requires significant investment in time and budget, and this really needs to be taken account during planning. It takes a long time for these things to happen. In terms of programmatic impact, immunization service offerings increased across all countries, lending support to how functional cold chain equipment can expand EPI programs' reach. Deployment of the service bundle. The service bundle providers has overall achieved its goals of timely installations. There were some concerns around costs, but with effective monitoring systems for deployment, and the allowance for minor deviations, they really have achieved quality installations. The training by the service bundle providers was found to be insufficient, though, and we are looking towards requiring further improvement and clarifications on the topics that need to be covered. In terms of maintenance and cold chain equipment monitoring, it was found that there's a lack of clear mechanisms for monitoring cold chain equipment performance over time and providing feedback to manufacturers. Warranty processes also unclear in many places, with uncertainty in terms of who is responsible for reporting breakdowns to supply division and PQS. In terms of market shaping, the CCEOP, as we have seen earlier, has successfully incentivized new product offerings and led to early widespread uptake of target product profiles. The increased product offerings did not organically lead to healthy market distribution due to the initial country preferences in applications, and later stage market shaping interventions were needed to course correct. The CCE market continues to have volatility of demand, and efforts to smooth demand are needed in Gavi 5.0. Aggregate annual forecasts have been accurate, while product-specific forecasts and timing of demand materialization have had greater variation. And as we have heard, COVID-19 has resulted in application delays and deployment, but the PMTs have continued to function and provide oversight. Repair and maintenance has also continued, and demand for immunization services has increased and not demand for immunization services has decreased and not fully bounced back once suspended services has resumed. So based on that, I hand over to Karuna to tell us a bit about the iterations for the Gavi 5.0 strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So we wanted to quickly present on the Gavi 5.0 program and some of the key considerations that we're looking at as we design the cold chain equipment program in these next 5 years. So quickly, here is an overview of the Gavi 5.0 strategy. And I won't go into all the details, but at a high level, what's important to note is that there really is this focus on equity and leaving no one behind with immunization. And this aligns well to the SDG focus and then the WHO's vaccine strategy. So within the cold chain equipment program, we're very much tied to goals number 2 and goals number 4. So strengthening health systems to increase equity, as well as ensuring a healthy market for vaccine-related products. So within the new CCE program and what we're thinking through, we wanted to share some of the considerations around which product options and platform requirements should be included. So Jalia earlier had presented on the requirements for Gavi 5.0, and Michelle has talked about, and Thomas, a lot of the lessons learned. So some of these key questions that we have as we think about the mission of really focusing on equity is, what are the right product categories to support? Should we continue with these categories that are under the CCEOP, or should we expand? So we're looking for feedback, and at the end of this, we do give our contact information, and if there's time for questions, we're happy to take feedback. But we are looking for especially programmatic thoughts as to what would be the most beneficial product category supported. We're also looking for feedback as to what should be platform eligibility requirements. I've listed the 5 that we've already talked about, but it would be interesting to hear programmatic and others' feedback as to what other requirements might help meet your programmatic goals in terms of what cold chain equipment what level it should meet. And then a third area that links to what Thomas was talking about is there a different way that we could structure the procurement options or the market to better meet country needs? So right now we have these product offerings that come in these 30-liter size bands. And if there's a different way that we could be doing that to meet country needs, we'd be open to feedback as well. So another area that's key to our thinking about program design for 5.0 is temperature monitoring. So as mentioned, we currently support the bundling of 30 DTRs with fridges. RTM is supported, but it's not mandatory. And we're thinking through questions as to, should remote temperature monitoring be mandatory? If so, at what levels of the health system? And for RTMs, regardless of what our position is, should these be physically integrated into fridges or just bundled so that there's one installation? So we're looking for your reactions to these potential methods of how RTM could be delivered and as to what requirement or lack of requirement might best meet program needs. We're also interested in feedback on data requirements. The WHO PQS is updating the specifications around equipment monitoring. And one thing to note is this idea around an open API that would allow data from supplier platforms to actually be redirected into country LMIS systems. So we're interested to know your feedback on that in terms of what data requirements should the CCEOP support for any RTM. Other areas that we're looking into around this 5.0 program design, which I won't go into details given time limitations today, but we are looking into what maintenance service offerings should potentially be provided under Gavi 5.0. Likely any approaches would be piloted first. Jalia also mentioned around scaling up and pilots of delinking. So potentially, depending on the outcomes of the evaluations, this could be something that we also support at greater scale. Again, innovation remains a core part of what we do at Gavi and in the CCE program design. So we're looking into ways that we can continue to incentivize the appropriate innovations that meet country needs, as well as taking into account the future PQS-DPPs that will be finalized in the coming months. And then under 5.0 strategy development, we are relooking at our procurement and market shaping strategies to make sure these do meet the 5.0 goals and evolve as market conditions continue to move towards a healthier state. And lastly, a key focus is on what are the right products and approaches to reach the unimmunized or the underimmunized populations. Should we have a greater focus on passive devices or on other types of technologies or equipment that reaches the last mile populations? So if you have any thoughts or comments on that, very happy to hear them as well. And please send any feedback on these questions we've raised to myself, Karuna, or to Jalia. And here is our contact information, and we'd be very happy to receive your feedback. Thank you. And now over to Jalia to talk about IMPT.
Thanks, Karuna. Now, in previous sessions, Michelle also alluded to the fact that based on the GSI evaluation and other sources, that there's been unclear monitoring of equipment to make sure that maintenance is basically happening within countries. And so IMPT really looks at how we make use of existing data within countries to be able to guide maintenance decisions, both at country and global level. And this comes from the fact that with CCEOP as well as other investment opportunities, or other funding opportunities. We've seen investments in not only vaccines and equipment increase over time, in which countries have actually invested, Gavi as well as other donors, and it emphasizes the need to really have in place robust maintenance systems to be able to maintain these investments. And if we look at, from an evaluation point of view, if we look at how maintenance has performed over the last couple of years, we've seen a 5% increase in the maintenance EVM score, and yet most of the Gavi-supported countries still do not meet the 80% target. So as we continue to make these investments, both within the existing program and the next program, and investments in the future in the next strategic period, the key issue is the core element here we want to focus on is how countries can use the existing data that they have from remote temperature monitoring devices to be able to inform those discussions, and also at global level how that can support design elements around the equipment that we have in the system. And we recognize that countries are a core part of this program, and a core part of making sure that these maintenance systems are in place, they're well established, they're functioning, and are able to monitor their own equipment. So IMPT really is a web-based tool that aggregates cold chain equipment performance data from remote temperature monitoring devices, and specifically temperature data, power data, and maintenance data, depending on where that sits, and makes that available for countries, Gavi supported for countries that do have either smart RTM-enabled CCE or standalone RTM devices. And really the point is to make sure that they have the inputs, they have the data inputs that require them to do their maintenance planning, to hold manufacturers accountable, especially where we have issues, not only within the country, but even beyond other countries, issues that are related to design, and these are issues that manufacturers can directly address. We want to also emphasize that IMPT does not replace the existing systems within countries, but rather draws upon the data within countries. So that may be ELMI systems, that may be existing RTM dashboards, but really if you consider countries that do have a multiple RTM dashboards, it is that single point of view that countries can use to review at an aggregate level the performance of their cold chain equipment. One other point to emphasize is that because IMPT supports Gavi-supported countries, a range of Gavi-supported countries, the data in there is anonymized to ensure confidentiality of the data for both countries and global stakeholders as Gavi, UNICEF, and WHO that will be using this data to make the necessary improvements to the equipment that is out there. Yes, and to countries, we really hope some of the basic questions that the cold chain performance data that you get can help you address more around, you've deployed equipment in the field. Is it meeting your expectations? Is it working as well as it was intended? If you're thinking about maintenance planning, IMPT intends to provide some data around the diagnosis, what is causing equipment failure, as well as the most commonly used spare parts. So countries can be able to have an estimate from the brands that they have invested in country, how which brands should they stock upon based on the usage rates. Now, the other is also around making sure that over the lifetime of the equipment, as they continue to monitor the equipment, they can ensure that the equipment is meeting the shelf life or lifespan of that equipment, but also being able to proactively use the data inputs that they have to be able to plan their maintenance visits accordingly. So roughly, just to sum it up, IMPT really is that tool that will give countries and global stakeholders cold chain equipment performance data to allow them to make the necessary maintenance decisions that they need to make at that level and be able to implement corrective action. So in terms of progress, yes, we've had significant progress on the development front, and we do acknowledge there have been some challenges around deploying in countries because of the COVID situation and response, but we're at the point where we have a demo being released in the next couple of weeks to give you a sense of what the tool looks like, but more so to jointly make sure that we get feedback from the countries as well as the partners on the development front to be able to put out a tool that really meets the requirements of countries and global stakeholders to address those key questions we talked about. So for for the rest of this year, we'll be focusing on putting out that demo, getting feedback from countries, and most of next year we'll be focusing on rolling that tool out to countries that have already been approved, but also integrating that maintenance data. Thank you so much.